Everyone gets upset when they lose a point they shouldn't have, but in the end, it's about the ability to shift from that frustration to starting over.
Behind the blinding stadium lights and the celebrated smile, tennis's most electrifying superstar has finally broken his silence. At 23, Carlos Alcaraz finally reveals the reality of what we all suspected about the brutal, unsustainable toll of elite professional tennis. For years, the world treated him like an unbreakable machine. Fans saw a phenom who could sprint corner to corner for 5 hours, crack explosive forehands at 90 miles an hour, and lift Grand Slam trophies with joyful ease. Now, that illusion of invincibility has completely shattered. Alcaraz openly admitted the dark truth hanging over the ATP locker rooms. The relentless tour calendar is actively breaking players physically and mentally. His exact warning was chilling. They have to do something with the schedule. Mentally, it's really demanding. If they don't change it, it's going to kill us. Right now, a lot of good players are going to miss a lot of tournaments because of injuries. Sometimes I don't feel motivated at all. He wasn't exaggerating. He was predicting his own downfall. The warning signs were ignored, and in mid-April on the red clay of Barcelona, the physical collapse finally arrived. His right wrist gave out during a match against Otto Virtanen. Scans confirmed every player's worst fear: severe right wrist tenosynovitis, a dangerous inflammation of the tendon sheath that completely shut down his 3,200 RPM forehand. What followed was a heartbreaking 4-month blackout. Carlos was forced to withdraw from Roland Garros, surrendering his French Open crown without hitting a single ball. Weeks later, he withdrew from Queen's Club and Wimbledon, forfeiting his grass court title as well. Over 3,300 ranking points vanished into thin air. Then came August 2026, the moment the crisis reached a point of no return. Cincinnati tournament organizers confirmed Carlos officially pulled out of the Cincinnati Open. Skipping Cincinnati stripped away another 1,000 points, officially knocking him down to world number 3 and handing the world number 2 ranking spot to Alexander Zverev. Now, Carlos faces the ultimate trial by fire. When the US Open begins on August 30th, he walks onto Arthur Ashe Stadium completely cold. He is defending 2,000 ranking points with 0 competitive matches on hard courts since March. Because he dropped to the 3rd seed, he loses protected draw placement, facing a 50% chance of meeting world number 1 Jannik Sinner in a brutal 5-set semi-final war before even reaching the final. Meanwhile, Italian Tennis Federation medical official Gianni Daniele sparked global controversy by claiming that 4 months of isolation have triggered severe mental weakness and psychological strain behind closed doors. Working under head coach Samuel López, Carlos is desperately trying to engineer a miracle comeback. Is Carlos Alcaraz's confession a cry for help that the sport refuses to answer, or is he walking straight into the most dangerous physical trap of his entire career? The untold truth behind his locker room confession exposes just how close modern tennis came to permanently destroying its brightest star. The illusion of the modern tennis gladiator has officially collapsed under its own weight. For the last 3 years, the sports world treated Carlos Alcaraz like an indestructible superhero. We marveled at his ability to sprint 20 feet behind the baseline, slide on red clay, leap horizontally on grass, and detonate 85-mile-an-hour winners from impossible defensive positions. When he completed his career Grand Slam by winning the 2026 Australian Open over Novak Djokovic, the assumption was simple: this kid was built differently. His body was forged from steel, his smile was immune to dark thoughts, and his energy was limitless. That narrative was always a dangerous lie. Behind closed doors, the human being driving that superhuman machine was screaming for relief. When Alcaraz spoke out during an international press conference, his words sent shockwaves through the executive offices of the ATP. He didn't offer standard, PR-polished athlete responses. He went straight for the throat of the tennis establishment, warning that the calendar was going to break players physically and mentally. Think about the sheer courage and raw desperation behind that confession. A 23-year-old multi-slam champion publicly admitting that he wakes up some mornings with zero desire to step onto a tennis court. It confirmed what tennis insiders and exhausted players have whispered in locker rooms for decades. The 11-month professional tennis calendar is a meat grinder designed for television broadcasting rights and sponsor revenue, completely detached from human biological reality. The tour requires mandatory participation in 9 Masters 1000 tournaments and 4 Grand Slams, penalizing players with massive 0-point rankings if they skip events to let their joints recover. Critics attempted to push back, pointing out that Alcaraz signed up for high-paying exhibition matches like the Six Kings Slam in Saudi Arabia. But Carlos fired right back with absolute clarity. Exhibitions allow a player to control their intensity, entertain fans without ranking pressure, and dictate their own schedules, whereas the ATP Tour forces athletes into high-stress, win-or-drop points battles week after week with 0 mandatory rest windows. The calendar demands relentless output, but Carlos Alcaraz's unique style of play made a physical breakdown mathematically inevitable. Most tour professionals hit standard topspin forehands, relying on rotational trunk turns and moderate wrist action to generate around 2,600 RPMs. Carlos built something far more violent. He relies on extreme forearm acceleration, late lag, and a hyper-explosive wrist snap at the precise instant of ball contact. That violent biomechanical whiplash produces over 3,200 RPMs of heavy, destructive topspin. Every single time Carlos unleashes that stroke, hundreds of pounds of kinetic vibration shoot through his extensor carpi ulnaris tendon sheath. Under head coach Samuel López, Carlos maintained an explosive tournament pace through the early months of 2026. He won the Australian Open in January to complete his career Grand Slam, claimed the Qatar Open in Doha in February, and battled through brutal 3-set matches at Indian Wells, Miami, and the final of Monte Carlo against Jannik Sinner. But human tendons have a finite capacity for shock absorption. On April 14, 2026, at the Barcelona Open on Pista Rafa Nadal, the structural limit was reached. Carlos finished his opening round victory over Otto Virtanen, walked back to the locker room, and removed his wrist tape. A sharp, burning ache shot through the joint. Scans confirmed acute right wrist tenosynovitis, a dangerous, debilitating inflammation of the synovial sheath surrounding his main wrist tendon. He immediately pulled out of his round of 16 clash against Tomasz Machaj. Carlos addressed the Spanish press on Wednesday, April 15, stating somberly, "It is a more serious injury than any of us expected. I have to listen to my body and avoid it affecting me in the future." The machine had officially broken down. What followed was the most agonizing competitive blackout of Carlos Alcaraz's professional career. First came the withdrawal from his home Masters 1000 event at the Madrid Open. Then came the Rome Masters. But the true heartbreak struck in late May, when Alcaraz was forced to officially pull out of Roland Garros, surrendering his French Open crown without striking a single ball. Weeks later, he withdrew from Queen's Club and Wimbledon, watching his grass court title vanish from his profile. Over 3,300 ranking points evaporated in less than 2 months. Trapped in medical rehabilitation in Murcia under head coach Samuel López, Carlos wasn't allowed to hold a tennis racket for 6 straight weeks. His right arm was immobilized in a rigid medical splint, while world number 1 Jannik Sinner swept through tournaments to build an insurmountable ranking lead. Alcaraz was confined to stationary bikes, footwork ladders, and mental visualization exercises. Rebuilding an elite wrist joint requires surgical precision. When the splint was removed, his physical therapy team worked tirelessly to modify his equipment setup. They dropped his string tension by 4 pounds to soften the string bed, reducing the kinetic shock waves transmitted up his arm upon ball impact. They progressed from air swings with stringless frames to foam balls, slowly trying to rebuild a stroke that naturally demands maximum violent acceleration. Then came the psychological firestorm. On August 11, 2026, Gianni Daniele, president of the Medical Commission of the Italian Tennis Federation, made international headlines with an explosive public critique. Daniele openly linked Carlos's physical wrist injury to a supposed psychological collapse, claiming that Alcaraz's prolonged absence had created severe mental weakness and a form of depression behind closed doors. Daniele stated that self-doubt had completely taken over the Spaniard's mind. The tennis world reacted with furious outrage. Fans and commentators slammed Daniele for offering armchair psychological diagnoses on a 23-year-old champion, but the controversy proved one undeniable point. The narrative around Alcaraz had shifted from celebrating his superhuman dominance to scrutinizing his mental and physical vulnerability. Every tennis fan on the planet hoped August would mark the triumphant hardcourt return of Carlos Alcaraz. The Cincinnati Open was supposed to be the ultimate testing ground. It was the tournament where Carlos could hit dynamic forehands on fast concrete, shake off 4 months of match rust, and regain competitive sharpness before the US Open. Instead, on August 5, 2026, Cincinnati tournament organizers dropped a devastating press release confirming that Carlos Alcaraz had officially withdrawn from the event due to his ongoing wrist injury. Tournament director Bob Moran confirmed that despite desperate efforts by Carlos and his team, the right wrist was simply not ready to handle the high-impact stress of hard-court competition. The competitive fallout was immediate and brutal. By failing to defend his Cincinnati title points, Alcaraz surrendered 1,000 ranking points. That point loss officially dropped him down to world number 3, allowing Alexander Zverev to claim the world number 2 ranking spot. Dropping to the 3rd seed isn't just a psychological hit to his pride, it completely shatters his tournament path at the US Open, which starts on August 30th. As the 3rd seed, Alcaraz loses protected draw placement. Instead of being placed on the opposite half of the bracket from world number 1 Jannik until the championship match, Alcaraz now faces a 50% chance of being dropped directly into Sinner's half of the draw. Think about the sheer impossibility of that physical challenge. To defend his US Open title, Carlos might be forced to survive a brutal 5-set quarterfinal against Novak Djokovic, endure a grueling physical war against Jannik in the semifinals, and then turn around 48 hours later to play a best-of-5 final against Alexander Zverev. And he has to attempt that staggering physical marathon while walking onto Arthur Ashe Stadium completely cold, having played 0 competitive matches on hard courts in 5 full months. Stepping straight into best-of-5 set Grand Slam tennis on hard courts with 0 match preparation is an immense biomechanical gamble. Concrete hard courts offer 0 shock absorption. Unlike soft red clay or slick grass, hard courts send severe vibrational shockwaves through the heels, ankles, and straight up into the forearm flexor tendons every time a player plants their feet to hit a stretched-out running ball. In a best-of-3 warm-up match, a player can protect an injured joint by playing conservatively at 70% intensity. At Flushing Meadows, there are no easy rounds. Every single opponent in the US Open draw knows Carlos hasn't played a competitive point since April. Rival coaching teams are designing scouting blueprints specifically to target his repaired right wrist. Opponents won't give him comfortable mid-court balls to build rhythm. They will hit deep, heavy topspin balls high to his forehand shoulder, forcing his wrist to absorb maximum torsional strain at awkward contact points. They will mix in drop shots to drag him forward and test whether his physical conditioning can survive 3-hour battles under stifling New York humidity. Carlos Alcaraz finds himself at the most dangerous crossroads of his young life. For years, he lived as the golden boy of tennis, the smiling phenom who made the impossible look effortless. Today, he stands before the tennis world as a vulnerable, 23-year-old human being, fighting to save his body from the destructive machinery of modern sport. When the lights go up at Arthur Ashe Stadium, the entire sports world will be watching to see if his generational talent can defy medical logic, or if the brutal reality he warned us about has finally caught up with him. What makes this moment so profoundly heartbreaking isn't just the physical damage to a tendon, it's the sudden, brutal shattering of sporting innocence. For the past 4 years, Carlos Alcaraz was the boy who smiled through the fire. When legendary champions before him cracked under the suffocating weight of history, Carlos laughed, danced on the baseline, and played with childlike joy. He made us believe that greatness didn't have to come at the cost of your soul. Now, the bill has come due. When you strip away the million-dollar endorsements, the private jets, and the glossy magazine covers, elite professional tennis is an unforgiving meat grinder. It doesn't care about your infectious smile. It doesn't care that you're only 23 years old, with the weight of an entire nation on your shoulders. It only demands more. More matches, more flights, more torque, more speed, until the exact joint that made you a god on clay and grass simply breaks down. Carlos finally pulled back the curtain and spoke the truth that tour executives never wanted the public to hear. When he steps onto Arthur Ashe Stadium on August 30th, he won't be walking out to prove he is an untouchable machine. He will be walking out to fight for his sporting survival. Defending 2,000 ranking points with 0 warm-up matches is the ultimate gamble. If he pulls off a miracle title run under head coach Samuel López, it will go down as the grittiest comeback of the decade. But if his wrist fails under the violent shockwaves of New York concrete, the sports world will be forced to confront the harsh reality he warned us about. Admitting that you're exhausted doesn't make you weak. Acknowledging that the machine is broken doesn't diminish your greatness. It proves you are human. Now the ball is in your court. Did Carlos Alcaraz expose a broken ATP system that is destroying its biggest stars, or did his own explosive style of play make this physical breakdown inevitable? Drop your raw, unfiltered thoughts in the comments below. Let us know who you're backing in New York, and hit that subscribe button to stay locked into every update as this historic drama unfolds.